Hello everyone! Hi, I live in Tokyo and I make videos about my life here, but despite what many of you might think, I'm actually not Japanese. I am from an insignificant little country called Sweden. I think there are about 4,000 Swedes living in Japan at the moment. It's not too many, I guess, but the interest for Japan in Sweden is obviously huge. So this video is also huge and about what it's like living in Japan as a Swedish person. Yay! What are the differences? What is similar? And where in Tokyo can you go to get some fucking knäckebröd? I actually don't know that one. Yeah, whoosh. Now, Tokyo is obviously the biggest city in the world. Terribly multicultural place. Despite this, though, I have a terribly hard time blending into any random crowd here, as you might imagine. It might be because of my distinct odor, I don't know, or my obnoxiously loud speaking voice, but I think mainly it's because of the blonde puff. The only other YouTuber I can really think of who's visited Japan with a similar hairdo is Logan fucking Paul. I've mentioned this before, but one of the goals of this channel has always been to sort of restore the understandably dismal reputation that blonde YouTubers have in this country. I really don't know how that is going. Anyway, the most common question I get from Japanese people when they first meet me is, you know, if the hair of mine is like this naturally or not. The wig is very convincing, haha. Okay, so if we can sort of tear our minds from my simply gorgeous exterior for 1 second. What else is different here living as a Swedish person? Now perhaps the biggest difference the keen observer will first notice when they move here as a Swede is what my dear friend Emilia pointed out.
Alltså skillnaden, alltså ni ser ju bara bakgrunden, alltså var fan kan du hitta detta i fucking Sverige? Skillnaden är ju, det är asiater här och det är svenskar i Sverige. Det är så bra. Jag har ju aldrig passat in mer än någonsin som jag gör nu precis.
Carl also chimed in.
Sverige, för mig, jag kommer ju från norra Sverige, så för mig är det väldigt stor skillnad mellan Japan och Sverige. Så jag tycker att Japan är mycket roligare för det finns ingenting att göra där jag bor. Den största skillnaden är väl att här, vart du än går så kommer du se människor, i alla fall i Tokyo då. Du ser människor överallt, verkligen fullpackat överallt. Det är som att du är i Stockholm konstant. Och sen när man är typ Shibuya så är det Stockholm gånger 10 typ.
Okay, so Asian people and just lots of them. This is the cutting edge analysis you came to this video for. But yes, people here are very different, not just in appearance, but in behavior as well. Wow. Touching others, for instance, kind of weird. As I mentioned in my Swedish dating video, Swedes do tend to be fairly liberal when it comes to touching others. Everyone just hugs everyone all the time. Maybe not so much now during these times, perhaps, but generally, even as a thank you for a receipt, you know, the cashier, you know. It's kind of true though. We shake hands and, you know, French kiss our way through meetings in Sweden. Here in Japan, things are very different. During my entire year here so far, I haven't touched one single person. I'm almost awkward about touching myself at this point, you know. You don't shake hands when you meet people here, you bow, the angle of which depends on how constipated you are, I think. And you, for goodness sake, do not hug. Such pornographic filth is to be carried out at home under the kitchen fan, if necessary. And only as a very last resort, when the sexual tension builds up to an unbearable degree, only then is it okay to perhaps, you know. One reason why people don't hug each other a lot might have something to do with the climate, because good lord, since my last video about 4.5 years ago, it has been constantly above 30 degrees here in Tokyo and incredibly fucking humid, which to me as a fragile little Swedish person with terribly sensitive skin, honestly it's been pretty tough. Andrea, my third ridiculously attractive Swedish friend, agrees with me on this. Okay, Andrea, hello.
Hi, we're walking backwards. It's very hot, very humid because it's a big city. The air doesn't really come in, so you die. It's like you're suffocating slowly.
She also had another pet peeve with Japan.
I would say probably all the paperwork here is much more easy in Sweden.
Yeah. And shit me, is she right about this. The number of papers and forms and hoops you have to overcome in order to sign up for the correct health insurance here, for instance, was ridiculous. My name in katakana is terribly long because of my silly middle names. When you first come here, you have to register your address at the ward office where you live. Writing my long-ass name over and over again with a slightly stressed-out Japanese official breathing down your neck was a good way to learn katakana very quickly. This kind of goes hand in hand with the cash thing in this country as well. Since it seems to be about a 50-50 whether or not your Swedish card will work in any restaurant or shop here, cash is very important to always carry around with you. In this respect, Sweden is like the opposite, because in the world, I think Sweden is the least cash-based society or something. Cash is honestly very rare to see in Sweden. Everything is done by bank transfers or sexual favors, you know. Obviously also very different is the food. Yay! Not just the shit you shove in your face, but the way you eat it and where. So in Sweden you go to a restaurant and you order from a menu what you like, and then you eat that. Well, in Japan, you order what you don't like. No, that is not true. This video is filled with lies. But it's common to order stuff for everyone here. So you order lots of small dishes and everyone sort of shares. Also, at least here in Tokyo, it's common for food places to not just be on the first floor, but maybe, you know, on the 9th floor in a skyscraper or something. So you have to take an elevator up. If you're lucky, you can get a table by the windows and you have an amazing view. Food places up in high buildings are very common, and street space is very limited. Everything is sort of crammed together, so outdoor seating is very rare. So all that might sound slightly discouraging, perhaps, or like scary for those Swedes of you who want to move here someday. Yes. So what are the similarities between living in Sweden and Japan? On the surface, Sweden and Japan are obviously terribly different, but on some very fundamental levels, I feel that there are some cultural things that they have in common. For example, respecting other people's personal space is very big in both countries. You're not supposed to bother strangers in Sweden or in Japan. So the typical example is on the tube. In Sweden, talking loudly on the phone, for instance, is seen as quite rude and annoying by others, and in Japan, that can lead to about 50 years of hard labor, I think. In Japan, as soon as you walk out the door, you should be mindful that you're part of a big group of people and think in that sort of collective way. Therefore, you should be nice to others. Whereas in Sweden, the thinking behind it is very different, but I think the outcome is very similar. Because the respect for the individual is strong enough in Sweden for you to constantly think of others as, you know, their personal space is sacred, kind of, so you don't fuck with it. And in Japan, like the public space is very important, so you don't fuck with that. You know, probably a terrible analogy, and sociologists will go in the comments and shit all over me, but that's okay. Also, another reason I think is that in Sweden, people just suck at casual conversation and relaxed interactions. We all have a sort of majstångs shaped stick up our ass. And I think Japanese people usually come across as pretty shy as well when you first talk to them. But since there are such clear rules socially in Japan on how to sort of interact with others, it's very rarely awkward. It's just, as long as you follow the rules, you can sort of get by. Whereas in Sweden, there are no rules. So, like, the number of awkward interactions in Sweden is way higher than in Japan, I feel. At least that's my experience. And that's even me, like, with my terribly broken Japanese. Connected to this respect for others thing is that both Sweden and Japan are very clean countries. You could probably, like, lick the sidewalk in either country without any concerns or fucks given, you know. A dissimilarity to this is that Sweden is very conscious about recycling and sustainability, whereas Japan wraps already plastically wrapped wrappings in 3 more layers of plastic wrapping. You know, it's fucking staggering. My recycled nut of a father would shit his Swedish pants if he knew just how much waste I have produced during my year here so far. Maybe the reason why I think both Sweden and Japan are terribly clean countries is accentuated by the fact that I used to live in London, the perhaps most fun but least sanitary city in Europe. Living here in Tokyo, I realized that not all huge cities are as disgusting as London is. Okay, finally, everything just works, both here in Japan and in Sweden. Like, machinery works, trains are usually on time, everything is kind of, you know, taken care of. Again, compared to London, where they build waste and water pipes outside of buildings instead of inside them, the reason being that when they eventually break, it's easier to repair them. Also in Japan, there is 1 tap for both hot and cold water, rather than 2. Okay, enough about London, I promise. Sorry. All in all, during my time here so far, I've always felt terribly welcomed in this country as a Swedish person. The sort of culture shock I've experienced has been fairly minimal, and the little there has been like amusing or just positive. So don't worry about that. And again, my friends agree with me. I asked them what they miss most from Sweden, and if they could change anything, you know, about Japan, what would they do? Är det något vad saknar du mest med Sverige när du är här?
Kebabpizza. Lösgodis också.
Nice.
Det är typ det.
Jag erkänner, alltså Sverige är fett ruttet, därför jag är här. Men jag saknar med Sverige, min hund.
Ja.
Och köttbullar kanske. Fast det brukar jag dra till Ikea.
I just like go like pros and cons.
Okay, sure, pros and cons.
So if there would be a city that's exactly like Tokyo, like all the restaurants, all the foods, all things you could do, but with trains going all night, no paperwork, and Swedish candy, that would be the most amazing place on earth.
That'd be heaven.
Yeah.
So to my Swedish viewers, kom hit. för fan. Det är väldigt trevligt här. Alla är väldigt snälla och ni kommer absolut inte ångra att åka hit, tror jag. Även om det bara är på semester eller om ni vill bo här längre. Puss puss på er. And if you are still homesick or just in desperate need of a kanelbulle, you can still go to IKEA, as Emilia mentioned. There's a recently opened store in Harajuku. They have köttbullar, fika, IKEA bags, but also the only collection in the world of IKEA clothing. So if you want to go to a Halloween party dressed up as an IKEA item, cosplaya en jävla Ivar Bokula liksom, with a huge barcode on your chest, you can. So that's it. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you very much to my ridiculously attractive Swedish friends who agreed to be in this video with me. It appears that I'm clearly the least attractive Swede in Tokyo at the moment. So until the next one, toodaloo everyone. I'll see you in about 2 months.